Ladies and gentlemen, Stuart, you wanted to start, or would you like me to?
I'll come down if I might.
Okay.
Thank you for calling the room to order. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Fred Roche Foundation. Thanks very much for coming, and thank you for Peter and the panel and Anne. I'm expecting a great evening. Just under a year ago, we had one of the Fred Roche Foundation meetings, and that was on, I believe, on new communities, but it was on our thing of looking to the future. And at that meeting, we had a number of people. I think Lee Shostak was here, but we also had the leader of the council, Peter Marland, who at that time announced the setting up of a commission. And I think that was actually fresh off the press, so to speak. That was new. That was something that not even all of his councillors knew about at the time. So we had, in some ways, I think we had a little bit of a coup there. But what I find interesting, it has moved forward. It's taken real form, and there's something that's of substance that has now been delivered. It was actually delivered. It was launched down at the OU yesterday. A very impressive launch, and it was something that was seemed to be endorsed, certainly was supported by the three leaders of the political parties of making certainly all the right noises. So it's something that now is, I think, taking shape and moving forward. But there is certainly a conversation to come out of it, and that's partly what I think our aim is, to open up and to create a certain amount of awareness of the report and the findings of the Commission. So thank you for coming. I wanted to just say very quickly a little bit about the aims of the Foundation. Those that are not familiar with us, we have a couple of aims, which the first one is to promote the 6 original guiding principles of the city, but to take that forward in the way in which the city might move forward. To stimulate informed discussion, which I hope and I believe and I'm sure will happen tonight. To promote Milton Keynes as a successful model, which I hope we all share. To make the Fred Roche Foundation Gardens, and that's one particular unique project in central Milton Keynes, a fitting venue. To encourage young and old to participate in the evolution of our own city, and it is focused particularly on the young, and I'm pleased that there is a young person that's represented in the panel, because it is so important to hand the city on, and then to make representations to support these aims and objectives, and to collaborate with other bodies, which is hopefully demonstrating is something that we're doing. One pitch is that we've had a series of talks in the past, and one of those we put together in a publication, and that was called Tomorrow's Communities, the Future City Debate. That is available at the back. For non-members, there's a small consideration for it, but for those that are friends of Fred Roche Foundation, or actually are thinking of joining up, and I would encourage that, then they would get their copy free. So that's a little bit of a pitch there. There is an opportunity for questions and the debate later on, but for those that might not be able to contribute immediately to that and want to think a bit more about it, we do have a website and we have a blog on that, so please put your views across to that. One thing we want to do is to collect views, questions, issues, and then hand them on to the Commission, because that's part of the dialogue. I, at that point, would like very much to hand over to Anne, who is going to chair us and keep everybody in order, and to the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart. I'm sure many of you will know that this morning Brian White died. Brian, I think, would very much have approved of what we're doing this evening. He cared passionately about this city. He represented Milton Keynes as RMP from 1997 to 2005. He was councillor, of course, and he was mayor of the city. And I think just before we get into the business of today, I hope you won't mind joining me in just observing a few moments silence and holding Brian and Lena, his wife, and his family in your thoughts and in your light. Thank you. Well, thank you, friends and colleagues. And as Stuart said, thank you again for coming. I'm going to briefly introduce the panel to you and then very swiftly introduce Peter Gregson, who chaired the commission that we're all here to learn a little bit more about and then to have a debate on. So I'll just go down the line here. I hope you can all see. We have Chris Murray, who is director of the Core Cities Group. Next to him, probably doesn't need an introduction in Milton Keynes, but Pete Winkleman, chairman of MK Dons Football Club, of course. Next to him, Judith Sykes, who is director of Useful Simple. On my right, Oliver Dean, a digital entrepreneur. Next to him, again, a man well involved in this city and known to many of you, great friends of us here, Lee Shostak, past chairman of the TCPA, of course. And then on the end, Sir Peter Gregson, Vice-Chancellor at Cranfield University and chair of the MK Futures 2050 Commission. So the way it will work is I'll hand over to Peter at about 20-25 minutes of slides and intro and information, which will kind of guide you through the booklet, which you all have on your chairs anyway. And then we will take questions. I just want to say that I know that one or two of you have sent in questions, which is great because it means we won't have a deathly silence after Peter has spoken and with nobody wanting to raise their hands. However, this is not an exhaustive list at all, and the purpose of today will be for any of you to chip in and comment. And we'll invite comments from the panel, of course, depending on the topic and what they feel they'd like to respond to. So without further ado, Peter, over to you, and I think you're going to go over there and do it.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Anne. Let me say that it's an absolute pleasure to be here this evening. I'm very conscious that I can see some faces that I saw at about whatever time it was, 9:30 yesterday morning, and there have been a series of discussions and conversations since. So I shall try and make some slightly different comments, but perhaps those of you will bear with me when obviously I'm going to rest on some of the same slides now that I did yesterday morning. But I would like to say that certainly I come here this evening, and I know the commissioners that are here this evening come here very much in the spirit of wanting the presentation part to be the basis for a dialogue and a conversation that will go on beyond this event this evening, and indeed I hope sort of reignite some of the conversations about Milton Keynes, the future and what have you. So I stand here privileged to have served as the independent chair for the MK 2050 Futures Commission, and really pleased to be with you. Just a few points that I want to make to begin with. The first is that in being asked to undertake this work, the Commission was very clear that this is about coming to a very important time in our history as a city. 50 years old, look at what's happened in the past 50 years and build on that for the future. So I think our remit was very much to reignite the bold ambitions of Milton Keynes as we look forward. That doesn't mean to say that somehow or other the lights had gone out in Milton Keynes, but much rather for any vibrant and developing community, society, business or what have you. There are times in history when it's good to be able to take an objective look at the future. And we were asked to take initially 50-year look, then we transformed it to be 2050, so a look for the next 3.5 decades. The second point that I want to put is that I think as commissioners, whilst I think that we are proud to be able to present our report, this is about the start of an ongoing discussion, debate and what have you. It's not about the end of anything. We hope that our considered work is the starting point for so much more. And it's in that context that we come to you this evening. I think our starting point as a commission was straightforward, and that was that if we'd been asked to do this work by the council, it was because the council wanted to look beyond incremental change. So our starting point was to say, well, Milton Keynes is a great city, there's no doubt about that, but we needed to take on the mantle that the status quo is not an option, because we want to make a great city even greater. And that's really the context in which we meet this evening. Anne has already introduced the commissioners here. I think the only point that are here tonight, the only point that I would want to make is that in the commissioners who were invited by the City Council, you will see people with a very broad area of expertise. There are people here that look at cities who have worked with Milton Keynes in the past or have a personal or a professional interest in Milton Keynes, so everybody was passionately interested in giving of their time in creating this report. And you will see that there are some people that are looking at it through the lens of being inhabitants, business leaders and what have you in Milton Keynes, and others who are looking at it from outside Milton Keynes, but everybody was very passionate about the future for Milton Keynes and is very proud to be part of it. We had 9 commissioners, as you see. We also rested very heavily because Professor Sir Alan Wilson has just chaired the UK Foresight Panel for Future of Cities. So in terms of looking at the wider context, we rested very heavily upon the work that had already been done, and Alan has a particular interest in Milton Keynes, and I think that he has probably attended each one of the Commission meetings and provided, as it were, expert and influential advice to us. So I just want to recognise that as we start. As I said yesterday, we had 2 core sources of inspiration in our discussions. The first was listening to the people of Milton Keynes, and led by our elected leaders, encouraged by the City Council, encouraged especially by Oliver on the Commission. We set about in the early stages not having any discussions about what the shape should be, but having an open-ended discussion with the people of Milton Keynes around what makes a great city, what makes Milton Keynes great, and what would make Milton Keynes even greater. And there were 5,600 or more than 5,600 conversations in that phase of the work. And I think that really gave us inspiration in saying there are an awful lot of people who care passionately about the future of Milton Keynes, and whose voice not only needs to be heard, but needs to be continuously engaged in the conversation. And certainly from the feedback and the ongoing discussions following yesterday's launch, I think that spirit is very much captured. The second was that in coming to any conclusions about the future, it's not about commissioners like myself and my colleagues here plucking things out of the sky. It needs to rest upon an independent evidence base. Lee has a pile of papers down there, and those are just the summary reports, the 19 working papers that are available for everybody on the portal on the Milton Keynes City website. And they've been commissioned at different stages in the work because we felt we needed greater independent advice. So some of these were reports that were procured from people who we knew had already done a recent study on which previous work could rest very easily. Others have been very much more ab initio studies. But you will see that clearly we've covered a vast range there, and this slide is just meant to share with you the type of organisations that we've used in developing these working papers. So as I say, these working papers have been important to us, but I hope that they will also be very important to our elected representatives in the council, to you, to our neighbours in different authorities bounding this city, as we take forward some of the ideas that we've put forward in our report. So I hope that that is a very important ongoing resource for the city. One point that I stressed very strongly yesterday, and I want to stress very importantly again today, all the commissioners seized the opportunity to engage directly, to move around different parts of Milton Keynes, to meet the various communities that make up Milton Keynes. And one of the things that's immediately obvious is that Milton Keynes is a great city, but that some parts of this city are much more advantaged than other parts. And so in recognising that we needed to grow as a city, grow economically, and become ever more vibrant as an economic community, we needed to make sure that that growth is inclusive. So there was an overarching principle that we set as a commission, and that underpins everything else that I say. So we are committing to growth, but it must be inclusive growth. We need to be able to meet the future housing needs of those who are already here, and those housing needs are changing with time. We need to be able to honour the original commitment of those who moved to Milton Keynes, and we also need to be able to realise the ambitions of people moving into Milton Keynes, businesses moving into Milton Keynes as a fast-growing city. And all of that is important. And it's very important that we grow to create the investment to be able to reinforce and to replace and to improve our ageing infrastructure where that is the case. We need to be able to continue to invest in public services, and we need to be able to deliver transformative projects, some of which I'll introduce you to very briefly in just a moment. But I want to make sure to everybody here this evening that the Commission was really clear in our commitment to the whole community. One of the things that we, every time we met, tried to do was to put our stake in the sand, because we were asked to look at the future and have an ambitious plan and vision that would create, if you like, directions of travel for the future. And it's very difficult to do that if you always meet coming out of your day job and what have you, and you start from the position of where are we today and moving forward. So one of the things that we went and did was every time we met, we created a place in the sand by talking about the type of headline that we hoped might be the type of headline being created in 3.5 decades' time. And this is the type of thing that we would routinely reflect on, and that would shape the way in which we read the reports and so on. Better by design, recognising that Milton Keynes is and has been built upon a plan. Better by design, Milton Keynes is loved by the 400,000 people who live here and in the nearby surrounding communities, and admired by urban leaders around the world. This is a global city, and it needs to be regarded as one of the leading lights in Europe and beyond for what urban design can be like when you have a plan and you're developing an ambitious city. Known as an international centre of learning and innovation with outstanding green spaces and a boundary-pushing cultural scene, Milton Keynes is where they get it right. It's a location of choice for growing families, young entrepreneurs, and established thinkers alike. So that's the type of environment that we are trying to create in this report. And to be able to then move from that aspiration to, so how do we get there, we addressed one big issue and then present 6 transformative projects that are interdependent. The big issue is, of course, is about accommodating growth. We are absolutely unambiguous in recognising that we have to continue to grow, that one of the things that sets Milton Keynes apart and sets the south of England apart means that there is going to be continuing demand for growth. If we are going to have a new deal for government, we need to be able to respond to that growth and also to bring about the investment from ourselves, and that's important. We did a lot of work and had a lot of contentious discussion in this area, and a very detailed report from Cambridge Econometrics underpins some of those discussions. Of course, Milton Keynes already has growth built into its core strategy. So we are already committed to increase from 268,000 people in 2016 to 309,000 in 2026. So that's the growth projected in our core strategy. And very much the continuation of that leads us to the stake that we put in the sand, saying that continued expansion would lead to circa 400,000 in the city and the immediate surroundings by 2050. And that is a starting point that we've started with. And having said that, we've then gone and said, so how's that going to be able to be accommodated? There's no doubt we can support a significant share within the existing built-up area. So this is not about sacrificing green areas or what have you. There are some areas for regeneration already, and there are some areas where if we progress with the transformative projects, there would be selective densification anyway within the city. So there is an opportunity to accommodate some within the existing built-up areas, but that needs to sustain, but we need to sustain the origins of this city, which is very much around our uniqueness in terms of the distinctive open spaces, low-rise developments, etc. We need to keep those qualities and accommodate some within that built-up area. We also need to recognise that there will need to be new developments adjacent to the city And that's why I think the launch of this report and its adoption or otherwise by our council will need to start a conversation that means that we can deliver upon this in partnership with a number of adjacent authorities. And that is a very crucial part of the ongoing discussion. Of course, we are fortunate in two aspects that are coming together. There is already a government commitment to the East-West Rail and the A421 Expressway and whatever that means. And of course, you've also heard of the mention of the budget and the how do you express it, the apportionment to the National Infrastructure Commission to take a detailed study of the Oxford, Milton Keynes, Cambridge arc. So those are two very important hooks into government, and therefore it won't surprise you to see that the first of the 6 transformational projects must link that aim for Milton Keynes to be the hub of the Cambridge, Milton Keynes, Oxford arc. It's very important that we do that. Anne herself helped to stimulate a direct discussion with Lord Adonis, who chairs the Infrastructure Commission. It was within a few weeks that the Commission received the letter from the Chancellor, and I think discussions are already ongoing across the arc to influence the National Infrastructure Commission to make this a national priority, just like the Northern Powerhouse has become a national priority. So this is unambiguously and must unambiguously be our #1 project. They are all interdependent, so it's not about a pick and mix affair, but this clearly is something that links us very directly to current priorities within government. The second, here labelled as MKIT, a play on the acronym MIT quite clearly, is to realise an ambition that's been held for a while, my understanding is, within Milton Keynes, to have a new style university. I think the ambition of moving to 400,000 means that actually we will start to be in the realms of a critical mass that means that this is viable. At less than that, I would contest that it's not been a viable option. But by sticking to that mass of 400,000 people, this becomes a very viable option. And what we've learned from the people, from the PA consulting report, and from a meeting of the... Are we getting terrible feedback with this? No? My hearing makes it sound dreadful. We've had 2 meetings of the higher education providers in the broader region, and all are coming together around the notion of a new style university. Would it be in Milton Keynes' interest to have just a teaching provision in a traditional style, indirect competition where for young people who want to go and experience a red brick university? Absolutely not, in our view. Is there an opportunity to create a new style university with a portfolio of learning that links much more closely with the business needs going forward, linked to rather more sophisticated models of workforce development and projecting job creation in the future, and having a research base that transforms our city to be a living laboratory, whether it's for logistics or smart transport or whatever it would be, is something that the Commission believes is a very exciting opportunity for Milton Keynes. So that is the second of the bullet points up in front of you. The third links to that in the sense that it's about raising the aspirations of learning. And certainly, I think all of us as commissioners reflect the concern across the community that at GCSE and at levels below the national average in terms of attainment, and feel therefore that we need a special project that links schools, academies, FE, doing some of the really exciting things that MK College is doing, and providing a very vibrant environment within which we can reasonably expect the levels of attainment to increase in primary and post-primary schooling. So those two projects, of course, are linked and reflect the aspirations to develop a learning environment that Milton Keynes would be proud of in 35 years' time. The fourth one down here, one that won't be a surprise to you because Milton Keynes is already a leader in this area, but I want to say that we've moved ourselves well beyond current debate around carbon footprints and what have you, to an era post all of that where people are looking at mobility, connectivity, a different type of learning, a different type of transport infrastructure that's not around traditional arguments of public and private transport, but actually is about connectivity and mobility for all. Clearly Milton Keynes, through MK Smart, through having the transport catapult here, being a city that is already committed to driverless pods, built upon the IP of some of the fantastic research coming out of Oxford University, linking perhaps to some of the other infrastructures, to Millbrook, to the new movie test track at Cranfield, etc., is something that can set Milton Keynes apart. So that's where our fourth project is. Our fifth one relates very closely to where we are tonight. CMK has very much been at the heart of the vision of this city for the past 50 years, and it needs to remain at the heart of this city moving forwards. So something about Renaissance CMK that's linked to and very closely aligned to the current thinking around the CMK Alliance and what have you, is something that we think is very important moving forward. And so we do also linking culture, creativity and innovation. Two things that stand out. Clearly this city's ambition to have an established cultural scene from scratch is really quite remarkable, and it's really extraordinary how that has developed. So too, of course, the innovative scene. So the fact that we've got the fastest growing number of new businesses and what have you, I think is linked to that growing cultural development. So creativity, culture and innovation are three things that we think should be linked together. And a quick win in that might be an international festival of urban design and living. The type of thing that Milton Keynes can do that other places can't do, and would grab the attention of leaders around the world to be focused on what can happen in a city like this if we seize the opportunities and move forward. So those, ladies and gentlemen, are the 6 projects. Just want to stress once more that they are interdependent and they're non-exclusive. And it could well be that if this report is taken forward by successive generations of elected representatives, that at the end of the day there will be other equally ambitious projects. But I think I want to re-emphasize that this is about a conversation, directions of travel, and those 6 interdependent projects we believe should be at the heart of the debate going forward. Next steps are really important, and for those who were present yesterday, you heard the commitments from the 3 party leaders and from the Chief Executive of the City Council, a pledge that this needs to move forward. It needs to move forward respecting the conversations and the partnerships that need to take place within Milton Keynes, within the different parishes and wards, looking outside Milton Keynes to neighbouring authorities, and it needs to be done across traditional party lines. And I think, therefore, we should have confidence that these next steps are actually going to take place. We need to have a delivery programme for these 6 projects. And my understanding is that that will go to Cabinet at its next meeting here in Milton Keynes. Since these ideas go well beyond the normal roles of planning, etc., we as a Commission believe there needs to be a strategy for 2050. That's obviously non-statutory, but there needs to be that strategy, and we've asked in the full report that that be set up. Clearly, this needs to be taken forward in partnership with others, and I know that there was a discussion hosted, I think, by yourself, Anne, this afternoon, that starts those discussions. Clearly, this is also about making sure that not only that we take the future into our hands, we grow, we invest in ourselves, but also we provide the hooks for a new deal with government. And I think you will find in the report that we've very explicitly, through these projects, provided those hooks for a new deal for government. So it's in that context that we present this report. We think, in summary, that it's an ambitious vision for the future. It builds on strength, it's evidence-based, and that evidence is there for all to continue to use in developing new projects. And above all, it's for the people of Milton Keynes. And as I said at the outset, this is about the start of something, not the finish of a report, but the ongoing conversation that perhaps we started with the 5,500 conversations at the beginning of this report. So, thank you for this opportunity. The commissioners, some of whom are here tonight, half of whom are here tonight, I know I speak on behalf of us all when I say we've been very pleased to give of our time for this process. We all have an interest in holding this ambition in our hearts going forward, and I think that it's fair to say that in going back to the delivery part, we'll be watching delivery with increasing anticipation as we go forward. Not to put too much responsibility on our elected representatives, on the City Council and so on, but clearly there's been a lot of work underpinning this report, and we are absolutely committed to sharing that with you now, sharing it very positively with our elected representatives at the meeting on the 20th of July, and hopefully then seizing the opportunity that this report provides. Thank you very much indeed.
Peter and the Commissioners, huge thanks for that very comprehensive, very clear, and I think very exciting exposition of things. Now, we've got about 45 minutes. We end at 9 o'clock. So, as I said, why don't we take some questions from the floor? It would be helpful if you say who you are, if you also stand up, and critically, I know people don't like to use microphones, but it just helps, given the sound echoing around this room, if you wouldn't mind taking the handheld mic from Val, who will rove with it, and sort of hold it not right up to your mouth, but just a sort of little distance away, as if you were going to be licking a bit of an ice cream cone. That's what somebody once told me, but then it stops that echoing. Who would like to have a go first? What I intend to do is try and take 3 together, and then we'll field those appropriately. So, Councillor Bint there first, Alan Francis next to him, and then we'll take this thrust around here. And Nick, is that your question? Are you actually going to ask a different question?
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question.
Brilliant, that's very helpful then. So, John, go for it.
Good evening, folks. Is this working?
Yeah.
Yes?
I think I'd like to throw away the question I'd submitted originally. I think what we've said has addressed that substantially, and I wanted to respond to what I've heard so far before asking the question, and that is to say, I think this is a fabulous piece of work. We've only just started to read it, absorb it, and I'm sure we'll be struck by different things. But for me, what has struck me is, although many of those things or issues like them have been kind of in the ether for a while, even those things I'm familiar with have now been said better than I think they've ever been said before. And I also think the point that's never come across before is the interdependence of that. So I just wanted to respond to just those two little tiny facets of it, and I'm sure lots of other people will have other things to say. The question I wanted to ask is, given that the council has something like 20,000 extant planning permissions, and the building industry is not seemingly capable of building homes at the rate we would like, do the members of the Commission have any suggestions of techniques we might like to use other than making hundreds of acres and thousands of planning permissions available? What else might we do to speed up the process?
Okay, John, thank you. Great to have the feedback and perfect in terms of your questioning, so folks, please note. Alan.
Thank you, Alan Francis. I asked a question about transport at the session yesterday morning, but today I want to talk about growth and to query this 400,000 figure that's in the report. That's effectively increasing the population of Milton Keynes by 50%. Over the period of this plan. And the question really is where on earth would those people go? Speaker talked about densification, accommodating some of them, and I fully support that, controversial as it may be. But as you said, you're not going to increase the population by 50% within the existing urban area, anything like that. So, and I certainly would not want to see new developments bolted on to the green fields around the outside of Milton Keynes. This is something that we've tried to resist, because if you just keep on going, eventually we'll bump into Bedford or Northampton or Lake Buzzard or whatever. You just roll out the grid, is the phrase that some people used to use. So that's my big fear, is that we'll lose one of the attractive features of Milton Keynes is that you're not far from the countryside. If you build on all the land around, we lose that feature, as well as the benefits of the greening and so on. So just where do we envisage those 400,000 people living?
Brilliant, thanks Alan, great question. And finally Mick, do you want to ask the one that was sent in?
Roughly, yes.
Yeah,
Good evening, my name is Mick Winter. I just wanted to explore really what happens next and where we would hope to be, say in a year or 3 years or 5 years' time. And what do you think success might look like? And how would we know? How might we review or revisit this process in the near future? Thank you.
Yeah, again, brilliant question. Okay, I mean, anybody can respond, but do you want to start, Peter? And then
No, I think all I want to say is that it's great, Anne, that we take a series of questions. The commissioners have got used to working together and what have you, and I think we'll pick them up by whoever wants to chip in, as opposed to actually pushing them in those directions.
So let's take them in order then. What can we do? Any ideas to accelerate the pace? Yes, Lee.
This really is very simple. Milton Keynes is capable, because it's demonstrated, that it can build well over 3,000 homes per annum, and it was so doing late 70s and early 80s. To do so again, to use up those 22,000 worth of planning permissions faster, the following has to happen. First, you need a much larger number of developers operating in the city, building housing for sale than you do at the moment. The Development Corporation used to get developers to build in advance of demand, and they paid for the land afterwards. Now, much of the land is owned by a very small number of developers. Very small number. And what the council needs to do is to basically reach an agreement with those developers to release land and release plots faster. Second, you can only build over 2,000 houses a year, not to mention 3, and use that land up faster if you're building social housing. And the council and government are going to have to agree that we start building social housing again. Now, the last government, we don't really have a government now, was strongly opposed to building social housing. The new government's going to have to do something to start knitting the country back together and strengthening the economy. This is an easy mechanism to do so. Again, in the past, sometimes houses were built and we didn't know whether they were going to be built for rent or for sale until they got finished and they either were sold to a landlord or elsewhere. Final way of doing it is to promote a lot more self-building. That's what I would do if I were in charge and wanted to do what John says.
Lee, that's great. Anybody else from the panel want to comment on that particular point? Okay. No? Okay. Well, let's. If we can do all that and accelerate it, then where will they go? Was Alan's point. Anybody want to tackle that? Judith?
Yeah, happy to. I think that's a question that we really sort of grappled with as part of the commission. What we didn't want to do was to commit an expansion of the city without careful consideration of where that development happens. And actually, what we haven't done is identified specific development plots, but what we've recommended is that a process of engagement now ensues with community to identify where that development should go, and particularly also engaging with businesses and future generations about what the form of that development looks like, because I think we all agree with the question that we want this to be sort of transit orientated development. We want it to offer sort of a compact city approach and not contribute to support the city. And so the question of what happens next in that particular regard, I think, is very much engagement with the citizens of MK and what that approach looks like.
Yeah, I think what's clear is there's several ways that you can do that. As we've already talked about, there is some elements of densification potential in some of the redevelopments, especially probably in the city centre. You've got other places where you might have some expansion of the actual parts of Milton Keynes, is what we imagine of the city at the moment. But also there's the opportunities that we referred to right at the beginning, which is the new east-west links. The fact that there is all this new infrastructure plan that will go around our city that we need to be able to capitalise on. And so the combination of all those things takes us to that 400,000 mark, which was a kind of average of what Milton Keynes had done over a number of years. So again, that figure could be higher, could be lower. We're already talking about over 300,000 in the current core strategy. And I think, again, one extra point to make is the big debate we had about whether we should be growing at all. That was one of our whole sessions was spent on that. And the problem is with not growing is that actually you're really saying to everybody that lives here, your future's not here. Because where are your kids going to live, where are your families going to come from, where are you going to get old? The minute you take us as where we are, there is inevitably some kind of growth. What was brilliant about Milton Keynes in the first place is that they understood that we're going to be that big, and what we're trying to say now is we need to have that as that possibility. Again, it's a direction of travel, so it's not specific on numbers, but we need to start considering what kind of city we want if it's going to be that big.
Great, love, super answers. And then Mick's point, quite rightly, well, what will it look like? How will we know what success looks like? And will things be reviewed? Or will this just be another kind of report that sort of sits there and none of these things get achieved?
Well, although our job's finished for the moment as a commission, we're still around. We're going to be keeping an eye on this, and we've put a lot of time and effort in, and we want to see this happen. I think it's an excellent question, actually. What does success look like? And I think that's a question that you need to keep asking as this process evolves. I think the first one for me is that it looks like people are engaged and they support what's happening. They're engaged in a debate and a conversation to support what is happening for their city. I wouldn't necessarily advise a referendum I think the standard has been set actually through, and this is not work that I did particularly, through the work of the Commission and particularly the work Ollie did in getting young people engaged in this. But an awful lot of engagement and an awful lot of passion. So that's the first one. I think the second one, on the university, Peter will know much better than I, but it strikes me that progress could be quite quick on that. Within the next 12 months, progress could have been made on that. I think there's a very, very compelling offer there that can be made by Milton Keynes. I think on, in terms of the rest of the issues, they actually wrap around the east-west arc very significantly. Milton Keynes is a sort of fulcrum on which that arc turns between Oxford and Cambridge. It can't really happen without Milton Keynes, and the university is one of the pivots of that as well. And that's where I think Milton Keynes has got a unique offer within the South East to make to government that is largely based on growth and on housing, but where it can do a deal for investment that will help to get those things going, to get the things that the people of Milton Keynes want and need for their city. I think you've got really distinct leverage there. And then the final one is actually the 50th birthday celebration. That you have to use that, in my view, to shout really loudly and demonstrate what Milton Keynes can do, not just in cultural terms, but absolutely on that front as well, whether the EU capital of culture will be available in the future or not. Set your sights on becoming a capital of culture, regardless of whether that title is available or not, and explore and debate all the projects through culture that we've talked about during that year of celebration.
Chris, I think that's very helpful. Can I just push you to say who, as it were, will lead on that to make sure that those critical success factors do get the tick in the box? I mean,
okay, please feel free to push me.
Yeah.
But there is a point at which the remit of the Commission ends, and actually the democratic process takes over. And we did debate very strongly, for example, whether there should be another version of a development corporation for Milton Keynes, particularly you alluded to. We felt at the end of the day, although there was sympathy in some corners of the Commission for that actually it was beyond our remit to say exactly how that should be taken forward. This is going to be debated for Council on the 20th of July. The Council, I hope, will pass a motion to take each of these things forward, and we'll then need to set out exactly the process for each of the projects. I think it's likely that some of us, would be involved in some of that, and at least, helping to make sure that people's eyes are on the ball there. We felt it wasn't for us to say exactly how that should happen in each case.
No, okay, that's very helpful to hear that. Did anybody else on the Commission?
I can give you a little bit more precise answer. The Commission clearly asks the Council to prepare a delivery plan that sets out precise milestones over the next 3 years by October, Halloween at the latest. If there's no delivery plan, you should start to get worried. I'll tell you what that delivery plan will say. It will say, for the hub of the Cambridge to Oxford arc, that within 2 years we know what the route of the A421 expressway is, and we'll have a very detailed investment program for upgrading the varsity line. It'll say within 2 years, Peter or another champion will have launched MKIT, the new university, and it will have an entity and there'll be real people around it. Within 2 years, the Milton Keynes promise will be evident on the ground that every young person that wants a university, a degree or a degree level vocational qualification will be getting one, and so forth and so on. So this delivery plan will provide those very precise targets, and we provide the pointers in our full support to do that.
Terrifically helpful, I think, that you would agree, Nick, in the audience.
Sorry.
Yes,
Can I
please,
just add one final point, as well as those key checkboxes for success? Also, I think in the immediate future, it's starting this conversation, and the exact number of people since 8 a.m. yesterday that have logged on to view our report was 1,541 that have gone onto the website to see it. And already we are starting to hear immediate feedback through social media, through our website, and for us, that's success because we want to start this conversation. And also going forward to 2050, I see success being just like this, a room full of people that at the moment are in these younger generations, actually being like all of you, passionate about the system that we live in. And I think if we can spark that excitement now, so that in the year 2050 we have got the current generation being as passionate about Milton Keynes, I think that will be one of the most successful things.
Terrific. Okay, let's take three more. Lots and lots of people will be here. I think John has got his up first, Ian Rebel, and then let's take the lady there. So John here. Again, I know who you are, but just repeat your name.
John West, I have interest in arts and waterways. No city needs a 35-year strategy as much as Milton Keynes does, so I think it's absolutely fabulous we've got to this stage in what we've seen. And personally, I like everything I've heard without any disclaimer or disagreement. I do have two questions though, one about culture, one about waterways. The one about culture is wanting clarification about how New Style University is. The summary document does at least say it will attract students from elsewhere. And my worry is that if it doesn't attract a student body of some significant size, quite a few other things will fall over. You won't get the CMK Renaissance, and you won't get the boundary pushing in the cultural agenda. So maybe a little bit more about how many young people studying 18 to 25 we will have on our streets, being maybe bolshy and angry and challenging and doing the sorts of things that create the real cultural grist that we need. That's my arts question. My waterways question, completely agree with the idea of being the hub of the Oxford-Cambridge Arc. There is a very important strategic infrastructure project which you've not mentioned, either because you don't like it or you overlooked it, which is the possibility of connecting Milton Keynes and Bedford with a canal which connects the national waterway network and the Anglian waterway network, which surely belongs beside the expressway and East-West Rail. But none of you's mentioned it, and I'd like to know whether it's in the long report, which I've not yet had a chance to look at.
Okay, right, Log, we've got that. Great questions, John. And so Ian, Chief Exec of the Community Foundation designate.
To me. It's remarkable from yesterday to today because the first 4 questions yesterday I thought were a little bit negative. And yet today everybody's been talking very positively. It makes a difference when you read something, doesn't it? I passionately support the focus on learning. I think that is absolutely key. And so that emphasis on MK Learning 50 and MKIT, absolutely brilliant. And the fact that some underpinned by those other 3 projects about transport and what we got, the mobility, Renaissance CMK, and of course the link with the railway, brilliant. When the city was created, I think apart from the landowners, it was the sheep that you had to convince the city. Now it's full of people. How do we make sure the passion that you've displayed, the passion I feel for this, is taken into the hearts of every citizen? So it's not 1,000 people that's downloaded it, it should be 200,000 people that are downloading it. How do we make sure that the partnerships are created that will make sure this endures and happens? It's too important to leave to the politicians, for goodness sake. It's got to be owned and loved by people.
And apologies, I don't know your name. But
Yes, I'm Hilary Bowman, Transition MK. Peter, you mentioned going beyond the carbon footprint. I wondered if you could elaborate on what you mean by that.
short and to the point, very, very good. Who wants to take John Best, if we do them in order? You were...
Well, I failed in getting into that report, and it's a massive mistake, because I actually think that embedding Milton Keynes Waterway is a fantastic opportunity that absolutely aligns with everything we're saying. When you look at some of the ideas that the waterway people have got at Junction 13, it could be a welcome to the middle of the arc and everything else. If there's ever a reprint of it, we absolutely need to get that line in there, so my apologies on that one.
It wasn't that it was squeezed out by others, it was
Yeah.
oversight in
Yeah.
the discussion and what have you. And he went and highlighted it yesterday morning when we met before the publication, and he said, look what's missing. So I think that's really
But just on that though, and bearing in mind looking at next steps, I would not give up hope at all, just the fact that it's not in the report, given that in the delivery plan and the submission to the National Infrastructure Commission, you have a chance to log it in, and it should be alongside the expressway and the railway. Yeah, I'm trying to encourage you on that. And then the university, you can't have a proper town of nearly 500,000 people and not have all age undergraduates living in the city, working around, walking around.
So I think there what I want to do is to refer you to the PA Consulting report, which is one of those 19 reports. We deliberately commissioned PA Consulting because they do a lot of work here in the UK and beyond the UK. And you'll see their reference to the types of developments from Finland through to Singapore University of Technology and Design, what have you, as models. You'll see in there an ambition, and it was plucking again numbers out of the air, that it should be a university with perhaps 10,000 students, to give an idea of numbers, and obviously that's then for whoever's going to deliver this to start to come up with a plan in response to whatever request is made from the council.
But it was saw the students as being a really integral part of the city centre.
And the heart of the comments around selective densification.
Yes.
So that project is clearly around creating a hub with accommodation for students, undergraduate and postgraduate, in a different type of environment that is co-located with transport, with CMK and what have you, to create a really vibrant hub. And this is something that has really been picked up in the conversations through Ollie with young people in Milton Keynes. So I hope that gives a bit more flesh to that one. And certainly I suspect that what the council will be doing is, in the first instance, resting rather heavily upon the PA Consulting report as an independent report commissioned by the Commission.
Okay, so that clarifies the vision on this. So Ian's point, folks, about how you really get the passion amongst 280,000 people or more. Go on, Judith.
Ollie and Judith.
I can just say a little bit that I think Ollie is probably the man to answer this. I think it's such an interesting question, and around the world actually cities are looking at how they develop different models of delivering these sorts of vision, recognising that sort of cities themselves are taking a smaller formal governance, regional cities are taking a smaller role. So this whole idea of collaborative governance and partnership working are definitely models that Milton Keynes can look at, and there are examples in some of the supporting papers to those models. What I would say, it requires a lot of investment over people's time and coming to events like this in the evening, so getting the balance right, I think, will be key. Ollie has greater experience in doing that on the ground here.
I think it's worth initially just going back to the very start of this, and I remember having a conversation on the commission where I said, what we need to do when we want to hear from people is we want to treat this as a campaign, not a consultation. And that was key to everything that we did. We ensured that if we wanted to reach people in Milton, if we wanted to make a report for Milton Keynes, we needed to speak to the people in Milton Keynes that wouldn't normally get in touch. We're in a very privileged position tonight to see so many people like you who are so supportive and very forthcoming with your thoughts and opinions. However, there's also a very, very large population in Milton Keynes who wouldn't come to an event like this. But also, their opinion is just as important because they are the true people in Milton Keynes. So what we ensured we did is we went to communities that wouldn't normally reach out. We used social media to try and connect with young people. We went into schools. There's a couple of events that really sprung to mind for me. One was a school in Bletchley that Pete and I went to, and I think you will agree it was just so brilliant to see a first school getting so passionate about the future of this city. They produced so many models. There was Lego, there was straw, there was paper mache. It was just remarkable to see them getting so excited about
amazing things as well.
Yeah, oh, we were blown away. We had to help decide a winner, and it was like ridiculously difficult to do. But then also, it proved worrying results because there was an event earlier on that day that I attended with young students from across the city coming together as a council working on various workshops, and I led one on the Futures project. And hearing 10, 11, 12-year-olds like Milton Keynes, but then hear from their older brothers and sisters who didn't like it and wanted to move away, but then saying, well, I don't want to be here. And that was very worrying. But back to how we engage with the whole community, it's about reaching out in new ways. We produced this image of a future of Milton Keynes and what it might look like in a very quick drawing, but that got people really excited. Whenever we took this big display to the shopping centre in Milton Keynes, we had a day with people walking past and then instantly just getting drawn into it, saying, oh, look what that could be. And this is only a very, very small segment of it, and I know it's on our website if you would like to have a proper look at it. And then also, if you look at our logo, everything that we tried to do was very, if you like, non-council. It wouldn't have worked if this was a typical council consultation. So we tried to make sure our branding was very much friendly and non-council-like. And I think if we learn from what we have done so far, which got a lot of people very, very excited about what we were doing, very excited about the future of Milton Keynes and where it could go, and making sure that we collaborate and listen and work with the entire community, that will be the way to get people so passionately excited. And it goes back to my point that I mentioned earlier, of making sure that in 2050 we have a room just like this, full of passionate people about Milton Keynes, but actually trying to make sure that we have to hire the theatre as opposed to just this room, because we've got an entire city behind us. But actually, that all starts now. It all starts with getting people involved in the conversations and reaching almost 6,000 people, I think, has shown in a relatively short amount of time that the passion clearly is there from our city. Reaching 26,000 people on social media shows that actually the techniques we used did work to reach the entire city, and learning from what we've done with that and using those techniques to take this forward will be a key part in making sure that we can really get the people on board.
Brilliant, Ollie. So new ways of working for the council and for all of us, in effect. That's a big part of it. So Lee, you wanted to...
You're not going to like this answer, so let's do that. 20 years ago, when I moved away from Milton Keynes, there had been 20 years before that of Development Corporation bashing. We were pretty world-class at bashing Development Corporation. From what I can tell, for the last 20 years, there's been an even more intensive effort at council bashing. And you're world-class at that, too. Now, what I hope, and if I made a small contribution to this, I'll be ever so pleased, we draw a line on that. The council is the only one you've got. Of course it could get better, but if we stop asking what the council can do for you, but what you can do for Milton Keynes, and take all that energy that often is very negative and put it into the kind of projects that we flagged here or others, then Ollie's dream of a theater full of not golden oldies, but young, energetic, new leaders of Milton Keynes will be realized. And what we hope we've done is we've given you 6 big projects that if you think they're good ideas, every one of those projects will have a way for younger people, older people to get involved in making them happen. That's what I hope you do.
Well, I hope people do heed that, no council bashing. I also hope, though, we don't all fall into the trap of old is bad, new is, young is good. Actually, to me, it's intergenerational. We do have that here. You just want more of the whole of the generations. Because there are some quite old people now, like me, who came here 30 years ago, that are still passionate and still actively involved, and many of those are in the audience too. So let's stick to our inclusive language as well as our inclusive vision. But it always a very good point. Yeah, who's going to take that?
I think it's done.
Carbon.
Carbon.
Oh, carbon.
Yeah.
You said
Sorry, yeah,
carbon
I remember that now.
footprint.
So we had a very impassioned debate, because this is the one area where it's actually quite difficult to jump ahead 35 years because of the rapid progress at the moment. So we actually made the assumption that actually if we were still talking about carbon and carbon footprint in 35 years' time, none of us would be here. You know, we would be in a post-carbon environment where, you know, we wouldn't be talking about low emission or what have you. Actually, everything had to be carbon neutral and so on. So if my comments were interpreted as forget about that, actually it was completely the reverse. It was because we have had to do that, and now we are working in a new environment with people thinking about transport in a different way. We got ourselves beyond, we said, well actually we've probably got the peak ownership of individual cars now, and that's only going to go down as there's more pooling, etc., etc. The combination of different types of zero emission transport opportunities will just balloon in future, and that was really the context within which that project has to be taken forward.
You only looked at it in terms of transport.
No, we said transport, so we didn't, I've fallen into a trap, thank you for pulling me out on that. We didn't talk about transport, we talked about mobility, and we talked about connectivity. And that, together with the inclusive growth, were the 3 points that we felt came together very important.
Shall I just
Yeah.
add to that? I think within the report, we say outside of those 6 big projects, there are some things that we need to do, as it says, Milton Keynes needs to do. So mobility is a big part of that sort of low carbon challenge, but we've also recognised that retrofitting homes, the opportunities for community energy schemes exist, and so but what Peter's suggesting is that we hope that that will be just done anyway, because we just simply have to do it, but strategically and focus on mobility is the right thing for the youth.
Okay, thanks. Now I'm just going to, the people who bothered to send in questions beforehand, I'm just going to check for those. Jackie Scott, have you still got a question? We'll take yours then. Steve Chilcraft, are you here? Would you like to still ask that question? Great. And Rebecca Kerr, would you like to ask that? Let's take those 3 then first. Jackie, Mike's coming.
I must say that this whole process has been so inspiring, and I want to thank the Commission for the work that they've done on this. Sometimes we're so close to the coalface, we're obsessed about the little bit that we may be responsible to deliver, but we don't always see the greater context. But what the Commission has done is deliver for us a context that is global, but quite clearly demonstrates where the opportunities are. So this is definitely for me the moment to look up and smell the opportunities. And if you'll forgive me, I'm going to read a question. My name is Jackie Scott, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Arts and Heritage Alliance in Milton Keynes. We applaud the Futures Commission's recognition of the strength of Milton Keynes' growth position for negotiating a new deal with government. That's absolutely inspired. Give us that challenge. And its recognition of the economic benefits presented by the Cambridge, Milton Keynes, Oxford Rail and Road links. Our sector also welcomes the acknowledgement that a rich cultural heritage and leisure environment is essential to our city's success. We note the Commission's wise rallying call for the city to model itself to deliver long-term strategic planning safe from the potential risk of changing political administrations. To this end, on behalf of our members, could I ask if the Commission considers the economic benefits it identifies offer the means to create an independent Milton Keynes Cultural Trust, equivalent to the Milton Keynes Parks Trust, to protect and nurture the community's cultural and heritage assets, to pump prime the city's long-term cultural and heritage planning, and to draw additional inward investment from sources unavailable to local authorities. Is this not an opportunity not to be missed?
Jackie, thank you. That's very clear, and I know Chris will come in on the answer on that. So Steve is next.
Thank you. I'm Steve Shawcraft and I'm chair of Big Local Conibra. So I'm coming at this from the perspective of one of, to use Sir Peter's language, one of the less advantaged estates. The pressure for the carbon target suggests the intensification of existing areas. What does this mean for the green spaces around the city and specifically for the donut estate surrounding CMK? And as the financial return on investment in new areas will outweigh that of regeneration of the existing deprived estates, how will the existing growing divide between the affluent and the poor be reversed? And in order to achieve that, will you be, do you see respect for neighbourhood plans, or will you need to override those plans which have been agreed at neighbourhood and local level?
Great question, Steve. Really good. And I'm sure the members of the council who happen to be here will hear that, because that will be part of some of the delivery issues too. And then finally, Rebecca probably follows on.
Rebecca Kerr, chair of CMK Town Council and co-chair, along with Paul Hunt, who's sitting next to me, who's head of branch John Lewis, co-chairs for the CMK Alliance plan. And Steve, I would say that one of the things we found really encouraging in one of the 6 big projects, Renaissance and CMK, was, I think, the strong support for the CMK Alliance plan, but more importantly, very encouraging to see the proposal for a program of investment, which will hopefully deliver a lot of the vision that we have for the city centre to become the centre of a regional powerhouse, which it can certainly be. But my question, in some ways, is what Paul and I in the steering group from the CMK Alliance plan grappled with, is what is the future of the commission? What is the continuity of the process? And what are the panel members' view as to whether you see a role for yourselves in meeting periodically again in future and monitoring the progress that you set out in your plan so fantastically?
Okay, that's a great question as well. So the first one, Chris, are you going to pick up the point about an independent...
Thank you.
We do have a public arts trust, don't we?
I want something bigger than that.
No, I know. I got that. I'm just pointing out that we do, that, you know, there are initiatives along those lines. Yeah, Chris, anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think Jackie's convinced that the problem is quite solved with the current structures. I mean, I think the simple answer for me, and I am slightly overstepping the boundary of the commission here, is yes. And if you're looking, you won't have time to look at them yet. What the paper on culture and heritage actually talks very specifically about how the future of culture could be financed in Milton Keynes, and how there was an ambition in the some of the original planning for Milton Keynes to do exactly that, and to commit assets to a cultural trust in the same way that the Parks Trust was set up, and that didn't happen for a variety of reasons. I mean, local authorities have got very specific problems with this at the moment. It's not that local authorities don't get that culture is important, they do. And you know, when the arts community makes arguments to local authorities that you get £4 back in the economy for every pound you spend, well, that's true and that's great, but you get nothing back into the local authority budget because all the taxes from that go back to government. That's not the same in other countries, and this is something we've been having an argument with government about. I hope in the long term that changes, but in the short term you've got to find a different way of fixing that. And I think if you can accept some of the growth arguments that are in the work that we've put together, and if you can leverage investment into Milton Keynes through the East-West Arc, then you have got a chance of doing that. I think it's up to the cultural community in Milton Keynes to help make those arguments and to put those together in a compelling way. I think there's every chance of doing that. And actually the future of culture in this country will rely on innovative financing, because the status quo simply isn't going to get us there. And actually something that Milton Keynes understood from its roots and its future is that cities began partly because of culture. And if cities are important to our future, then so is culture. And the two have got to walk hand in hand in that sense. So I'm really with you on that.
Those cities also, of course, benefited, whether it be for their universities or their arts and culture scene, from massive individual personal philanthropy. Let's just not forget that. So the wealth that is created here, those companies actually need to start giving back big time, as do those individuals. So I'm just going to make that point, because I always do, as you know, Jackie, but you can't, as you say, it's got to be innovative finance, not just structure, and it can't come from the public purse, because the public money is simply not there. Sorry that I'm intervening and I'm really meant to be chairing, but I care about that, as you know. Now, Steve's really important point, so who's going to lead? Yeah.
I'll start and then Judith can correct me. The green, open, spacious, beautiful quality of the city of trees, the beautiful city, the Commission completely accepts, celebrates, endorses, welcomes, and would not like to see damaged in any way. The city's landscape is the gift that keeps on giving, and for those who visit Milton Keynes for the first time, they assume that landscape was always here, but it was man-made. Most of it was. And the Commission would wish to see that protected, enhanced, preserved. Milton Keynes, some parts of Milton Keynes have quite a strong enthusiasm for neighborhood planning. And the task of reconfiguring, improving some of the houses that are there, demolishing others and replacing them with different houses, has to be driven by the community. And the council's approach to Milton Keynes Regenerate MK, the new partnership, is designed to do just that. I would hope that those communities see some benefit in having houses for sale next to the social housing and at a wider price range, but it will be the communities that first and foremost that will take those views through the neighborhood planning process. Our advice to the council and to those communities is that those communities will be better places if there is some intensification along transit-oriented corridors to help make it easier to provide better public transport. And we would hope, council's policies kind of say that now, but they're not really enforced very strongly. We would hope that there's a dialogue between each of those communities and the council about what kind of density, if any, increases at all, how best to protect the landscape, and how best to provide opportunities for people who want to trade up to a better house to stay in their own community. That is a neighborhood planning process, and it's a dialogue between the council and each of those neighborhood plans.
Thanks, Lee. And then to Rebecca's point. Oh, sorry, Judith. Yes.
I think you've articulated that really well. I think the green space was paramount importance to us. We very recognise that it's a massive asset, not only because of the amenity and the visual impact, because of the biodiversity, with its support in controlling microclimate in the context of potential global warming and sustainable drainage. So we did absolutely recognise and want to protect that asset. And And I think, moreover, actually, just to add to what Lee has said, that the conversation within the Commission has not been about growth first, but has been about how we can increase the prosperity of all of those that live in Milton Keynes, and with those particular neighbourhoods in mind. And so the opportunity to do selective intensification to create better opportunities for those people to move about the city and to benefit from the community infrastructure that can be then invested back into those communities, I think was very much sort of part of the discussion.
Thanks, Judith.
Yeah.
Apologies, and Chris.
I agree with everything my fellow commissioners have said on that. And I think there's another issue which is implied by the question, which is about underlying structural issues within local economies and how you bring people into prosperity, which is more than just a spatial issue. And actually you do need to look to the council, and you do need to look to the third sector to reform the way in which they work to drive more inclusive growth. And that was absolutely at the heart of what we were saying. There is a real zeitgeist about this. The RSA has set up an independent commission on inclusive growth chaired by the economist Stephanie Flanders. You know, I'd urge MK to engage with that and to take its issues in front of that commission. But ultimately this is about shifting from, in my view, a model at the moment where we see social policy and economic policy as utterly separate things, rather than understanding one is the driver of the other. And secondly, where we see public services through the filter of a kind of deficit rather than an investment model. So we always talk about the cost, and we always talk about need rather than investment and viewing people as assets. And there is good work on this. I think Milton Keynes could really benefit from some strong arguments it can make about the way in which the totality of public resources that are spent in the city, I would guess 90% of which is decided in Whitehall, not your city hall, can change. And working on the third sector, you can actually begin to bring about that reverse.
Well, and it is changing with devolution and city deals, of course. So if we go with the gain of that, it will help some of this.
Yes.
Yes, but it's a movement in the right direction, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so, in fact, fittingly, as we're coming to a conclusion, to Rebecca's point, will you be back? Will you be holding feet to the fire and checking if at least some progress is made?
Perhaps I can
Yes.
put that one in. I think what is really encouraging, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of all of my colleagues, is that the conversation has started this evening. And this has been, you know, in a way, has jumped ahead of where we are. Just to remind you that we were asked by the City Council to deliver a report that set directions of travel and an ambition for the future. I have to say that I've been really impressed tonight by the sort of level of engagement, the opportunity to go a bit underneath, in some cases, what's in the report, to be able to refer to the working papers, which are there for us to continue this conversation and to inform the ongoing delivery. As to the point of, do we see a future for ourselves? Actually, that's not a question for us. We were asked to do this work on behalf of the council. As far as we're concerned, we wanted to see this through to the launch, to the engagement tonight, to the engagement earlier this evening with some of the ward councillors, with the conversation that needs to take place between now and the council formally looking at the report and debating it on the 20th of July. At that point, the council has to take ownership. Of course, as I've already said, all of us have a passionate interest in making sure that some of these ideas that we've spent a considerable amount of time and energy in putting together are developed and taken forward in whatever way is right. Because at the end of the day, all these transformative projects are directions of travel. They're interdependent, they are important, they're directions of travel, but at the end of the day, they'll need to be taken forward in a way that's right. The views of the council, of the commission, will need to be retested, and feasibility studies, etc., taken forward. I know that I can say that, you know, that you haven't got one commissioner that's not passionately interested in following this up. have we got a remit to continue beyond the 20th of July? No. So I hope that that's really clear about where that stands at the moment.
Peter, it's very clear, and I think also encouraging that these conversations this evening have moved things forward even from 24 hours ago when you launched. So apologies to those of you who couldn't ask questions. I mean, we are limited supply time. Huge thanks to you all for coming, of course. Thanks to Peter and all the commissioners there who can't be here today. It's really, really good to have, as you have heard from everyone, this piece of work to help us take things forward. And finally, I mean, thanks to Fred Roche Foundation. Let me say that Stuart and Ken Baker, and is it Ken that you're going to end things, are two of the most determined, terrier-like, passionate, committed devotees of Milton Keynes that you could ever hope to have with you. I know they work with and represent many of you. I admire them enormously and I support them, and very glad to help out in any of these events. But warmest thanks to you for putting this on, and I hope it's been worthwhile. So Ken, the last word to you.
Well, I don't know what I can say after that introduction, but thanks very much. It's been an illuminating evening because I've never known it to be such a measured discussion. This is the start of many discussions on this, so I think we have to go on talking about it. And that's really what this is all about. We've got to talk it into existence. Thank you.
Yeah.